are the most common traits that all successful people have? This episode is episode 500. Man, it has been such an incredible journey. And I've had the privilege to be able to interview people from all walks of life, successful people who have made a difference in their communities, in their families, in their businesses, in their own lives, changing their lives, people that have experienced great success, great failures and trials, and overcome that. And I really wanted to, for this special episode 500, to be able to disseminate that down and say, what are the common traits that we can take into our lives every day and apply them so that we can experience success and transformation and impact and all the things that we desire. And so that's what we're going to do here today on this show. But before we do that, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this show. We wouldn't be here without you. This is the reason why we do this show, is for you to be able to enjoy it, be able to share it. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for sharing our reels and our posts and our full-length videos and the audios that are on the different podcast platforms and so forth. And thank you also to the booking agents that send us guests, because you know what, when we started this show, I started out with people that I knew, but over time, it was like, okay, I interviewed a lot of the people that I knew, but booking agents like Interview Valet, Interview Connections, and I'm not even going to go through the list because there's literally well over 100 booking agents that send us guests every week and in submissions and so forth. And of course, we can't have everybody on the show, but we just appreciate everyone supporting this show so wholeheartedly and supporting what we're doing. So thank you. And of course, to our guests that have contributed their time and their energy and shared their passion, their expertise with us. Without you, we also wouldn't be here. And so it is because I get to interview amazing people like you that this show is what it is. And so again, I just want to thank all of you for your support of this show. This is a team effort, and it wouldn't be what it is without you. So, yeah, I do want to start off with that. Now, first of all, if this is the first time you're tuning in and you're like, what is this? Okay, it's episode 500. Who are you and what's this podcast all about? Let me just share with you a little bit. My name is Nicole Jansen, and in 2015, I had been coaching for many years, but I was going through a difficult season in my life. And I woke up one morning at 4:30 in the morning, and I felt like it was like a divine download. It was like God said, you're going to start a podcast. It's going to be called The Leaders of Transformation, and you're going to interview difference makers and world changers. Go. That was the instruction. And I was like, do I want to start a podcast? What's a podcast? I mean, really, like I had been on a couple of shows, but I didn't really understand what it was or where it was also going to be distributed and all that. I didn't know the details of it. And so it was early Saturday morning, 4:30 in the morning. And so I got up and I called a friend who, had a podcast, and I knew he was doing great things with it. Some of you may know him, Mark Mawhinney. He has a show called Natural Born Coaches. I was on his show in episode 17, and I don't know where it is now. It's well into the several hundreds. And he at the time was doing a show 7 days a week. And then he went to 5 days and 3 days and shifted his frequency because it was so much. But by that time, he'd already done like 300 episodes. And so I said, he must know something about podcasting. And so I reached out to him. He was 4 hours ahead. So it was 8:30 for him in the morning. And I said, Mark, apparently I'm going to do a podcast. What do I need to know? And do you have a few minutes to share with me? And so we spent about 15 minutes on the phone, and he shared with me sort of the ins and outs of it and what I needed, the basics. And we were live 3 weeks later. And it was a step of faith is what it was. And I remember that moment where I was like, I don't know if I want to do a podcast, but I was struggling, like I said, during this difficult season in my life. And I realized that I didn't have the emotional capacity to create my own content, but I could interview great people. And so that's how this show started. And it's what it's continued to be over the years, which has been 9 years now. And like I said, 500 episodes. And so it has been quite the journey. And so if you're just joining us for the first time, that's kind of the history. If maybe you've been listening for a while and you didn't know that, that's kind of where this show started. And it was like, okay, well, I didn't have much of a marketing plan, because I was like, God, if it's your idea, then you're going to bless it, and you're going to lead me and direct me in the path that I need to take for this to be what it's supposed to be. And that is what has happened. And so we're now going into the next evolution of that, as we go and beyond 500 episodes, and we've got some amazing guests that are planned for you. But I, again, want to reflect back and say, okay, over 500 episodes, 500 people, across like nations around the world, what makes these successful people successful? What were they thinking? What were they focusing on? And so that's what we're going to talk about here today. And so here's what, as I went through the episodes and thought, okay, so this amazing person is transforming lives through business. This person is doing it through teaching mindset and performance. And somebody else is in the workplace, teaching diversity and inclusion, and being, willing to stand up for those that are disenfranchised, and those that are in missionary fields and helping to rescue kids and rescue girls, from being trafficked. And what are the commonalities to all of that? I mean, it's like some are executives of big companies, and others you wouldn't know their names, and yet they're making such a huge impact in their world. And so it really did come down to this, is that the secret to their success was three things, which also happen to be what I teach when I coach people. I talk about these three things, and I thought about it and said, is that really accurate, or are there other things? We can talk about all the qualities, right? Discipline and faith and belief and persistence and resilience and all of that. But it really comes down to these three things. Number one, it's what they focused on. It is the words they use, and it is the state in which they show up in. So let me explain that. So change your focus, change your life. What we focus on expands. And whether it's Christa, I have a few of these listed here. Christa Ungerbach, and he's actually been on this show twice. The last episode is 362, episode 362. And, and he talks about realizing, coming to that moment. What's that moment of transformation, that defining moment in someone's life, right? That causes them to either go towards success or continue on into failure if they're struggling, or maybe getting to that point of complacency, being so comfortable, and saying, is this all there is? Am I going to do this for the rest of my life? Or is there something else that I feel called to? But coming back to Christa, and he talks about, going to, I think it was the YMCA, and he was going to go for, get a membership. And he said, they asked him what his emergency contact was. And here he was, the CEO of a major corporation. I think it was the largest at the time, the largest privately held software company in the world. And he didn't have anybody that he could put down there as an emergency contact, because he had spent so much time building his business that he hadn't built relationships in the process. And that was an eye-opening experience for him, where he said, I got to make some changes. And as he did that, he's written books now, and he's totally changed the trajectory of his life and his family. And it's just incredible. It's an incredible story. Or I think of Dr. Robert Rome, one of my mentors, who was in episode 162. And many years ago, he has 4 daughters, and his oldest daughter, he was struggling with understanding her and relating to her, and somebody introduced him to the personality dynamics. And so he started to explore that deeper, and it changed his relationship with his daughter, Rachel. And he ended up then going in that direction, started Personality Insights, and has literally impacted people around the world, myself included, teaching personality dynamics, and taught at some of the top organizations in the world, schools as well. He has a heart for children to be able to understand themselves so that they can be who they're created to be and have confidence in themselves and not compare themselves to others. And that defining moment of, I'm going to continue to do the thing that I've always done, or I'm going to take the road less traveled and I'm going to explore this new possibility. Or Dr. Kimberly Behrens in episode 428. And she just decided at some point that the way children were being taught, right, was not working, because they were being labeled as having a learning disability. And she said, it's not okay. We can't accept that. And so she decided to go out and make a difference and create a solution, which she did. And there are others on this show, of course, that we've also had. I think of some of the other people that we've had on the show. I think of Jessica Swirsky and others who have focused on children and teaching them how to learn more effectively. It's just an amazing and important initiative. Tommy Newberry, he was in episode 424, and he realized he needed to focus on his attention focus. He had to have focus on what was pure, what was lovely, what was of good report. It's a scripture in the Bible, Philippians 4:8. And he created a whole business, working with CEOs, top level executives, being able to help change their focus, right? So what we focus on expands. And when I was focusing on things that were not happening in my life, what did I see more of? All the things that were not happening. And so one of the things that this podcast did for me was that it helped me to shift my focus. It actually did all three of these things. It helped me to shift my focus to, how could I serve? How could I get out there and share and celebrate others who are doing amazing things? And number two, when I talk about words, words are very powerful. Life and death is in the power of our tongue. If you believe in the Bible, and God spoke the world into existence, he spoke it into existence with his words. And we create our world through our words and through language. As we communicate with others, that's how we communicate our experience with others. And we say, I am frustrated, or I am tired, or I'm unhappy, or I'm happy, or I'm having a great time. I love you. These are words, right? Can be so transformative and impactful. And I think about the guests that we've had on the show and the language that they use. So the language that supports their focus, they shift their focus, choose what they're going to focus on, and look at the bright possibility of the future versus what's not happening as to what they can create. Acknowledge the problem, say, hey, you know what, there's an issue here. What am I going to do about it? Right. And so every single one of them decided that they were going to do something about whatever the situation, whatever the arena is that they were playing in. And then their words followed that. The other third part is the state of mind, sure, but also the state of environment. I think about Tommy Newberry, for example. He talks about words, right? It's the focusing on what is pure, what is lovely, what is a good report. But there's also a state of being. One of my good friends who's been on this show also twice, Evan Money, and Torian Scott as well, who I met through Evan. Their focus on the words that they say. Evan actually did a documentary that was called Words of Art, and the power of our words cannot be underestimated. And so focus, words, and again, I come back to state, which is the environment that we're in. Who do we hang around with? What do we listen to? What are we accepting? Even in our physical environment. Each of the people that has been on this show, I've had the opportunity also to peer into their lives as well, because we get to video and see them on video. Many of them, I think we started video somewhere in the hundreds in episode 105 or something like that. And I think it was 101 or 105. And then we started to do it more frequently. And now we do it with all our episodes. So I've had the opportunity to peer into people's lives, and you see the excellence around them in their environment, physically, but also relationally, the people that they surround themselves with. They surround themselves with people that are inspired, people that are moving forward, people that are possibility thinkers. And these things may be sounding so simple, and you're like, Nicole, really? Like, does this help me at all in my life? I promise you that it does. I actually discovered this from Tony Robbins. He calls it the triad, and it's change your focus, change your words, change your state. If you want to change the experience that you have in life, and that's why I share with every single one of my clients. I have clients that have these little triangles on their computer screen, because it just gives them that reminder that if I'm frustrated right now, if things aren't working right now, what can I do? Well, I can look at my focus. What am I focusing on right now? What do I need to be focused on? What are my words? What is the state of environment? Do I need to get up, move around, shift things, clean things up, clear things out? Maybe address some of the relationships that aren't working in my life. Shift my state, my physical state, my spiritual, emotional, mental, relational state, maybe even my financial state, is getting creative. All those things, like I say, all the traits from all these successful people really come down to those three areas where they focus. And it makes it simple, because otherwise you have so many things. Oh, I need to have this quality and that quality. And it's almost seems insurmountable, but it's not. It is not. It is simple. It is powerful. And like I said, every single person that has been on this show, has addressed that, whether they recognize it, call it that or not. Every single one of them has talked about that. Let me talk about a couple of others. Of course, I have 500 episodes. I can't do a shout out to everyone, but I think of Sarah Dusek, who was in episode 414. She ended up selling her company for like $100 million. But how did she come up with that company? It was because she liked camping, and she knew others like camping, and some like camping, but they don't like to do the camping in the tent. And so she came up with this glamping idea and built a massive business from it. Mae McCarthy has also been on this show, and she talks about success is not a secret, it's a system, right? And she's built $100 million businesses. Right. I think of Sir Ronald Cohen, who was in episode 400, 100 episodes ago. And we celebrated him and acknowledging what he's done in the world of social impact. And he decided at some point that it wasn't just about making money, capitalism, building a successful business. He decided he wanted to focus more on the social impact side. And so he created the Social Impact Fund, and has been a pioneer in that revolution, even around bonds and things that like financial products around that has supported social impact. So powerful. Dr. Deborah Gilboa, who is in episode 434. I'm shouting out a few of these also that you might want to go back and listen to them. Maybe it'll make you curious to check some of these out, because they're amazing. It's really hard for me to pick like favorites. So I just thought I would choose a few that really highlighted to me as I was going through the list. But Dr. G actually is how she's known. And, she talks about in her book about turning her stress into resilience. She was a physician and still is, and she has all of these things going on in life and family and all these things, and realizing that it wasn't about trying to avoid stress. It was about converting that stress into resilience. And she wrote an amazing book about it, From Stressed to Resilient, and highly recommend that book. And so we talked about in episode 434 some of the tips from that book. And you think about the focus, the words, and the state that she shifted, all of those three things to be able to do what she does and make the impact that she makes now. One of my favorite episodes is episode 416 with Stephen Dossou. He started out in life, growing up in a little hut with a dirt floor, and deciding that he wanted to, I think it was in the Tonga. And, and he decided he wanted more out of his life. And so he left and went to, when he got old enough, he left and he went to South Africa, and was living in an abandoned warehouse, and then at the market was trying to sell apples, and someone saw him and saw his charisma and his passion. And he was like, I'm going to make something of myself. And so they invited him to a job interview, and it changed the trajectory of his life, because he started to sell vacuum cleaners, which he'd never heard of a vacuum cleaner. They had to explain to him what it was. And then he started selling vacuum cleaners. In 6 months, he was area manager. And it's literally changed the trajectory of his life and of his family and for generations. Change your focus, change your words, and change your state. He changed his environment. He had to go somewhere. He had to believe and have a focus and a vision. And he said, I'm going to do this. I don't know. I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. And then he changed his environment because he felt like he needed to change his environment. And so he did. And today he's an entrepreneur, that has businesses in many different countries, and he speaks and trains and talks about transformation all over the world. And it's such a wonderful story. Joel Green, episode 429, he talks about extracting strength from the struggle. Vishen Lakhiani, some of you may know him. He's the founder of Mind Valley. Episode 463, deciding to transform the educational system. Andrew Hewitt, episode 313, he decided he was going to change the game of business for good. Dan Takiti, who was just recently on this show in episode 496 as well as 475, but in this last episode, he was talking about choosing to love versus hiding in his grief, talking about the loss of his grandson, his young grandson who got killed by a tree falling, and how he brought the family together, to be able to grieve and to support each other through the process. He talks about his life journey, his mother being catatonic, and he was young, and dealing with those things, and how it changed the trajectory of his life, but how he got to choose what he was going to focus on, the words that he was going to, say, and what he was going to declare about himself and his life, and decide who he was going to be going forward. And because that can, there's a lot of times people, we hear stories where they're like, yeah, I had a rough upbringing, and so that's why I am where I am. And that's why I've struggled and failed, because my upbringing is this way. And yet at the same time, there's other people who have struggled in difficult situations, like Stephen, or like, Dan, or many others, right? Who they take that, situation that's that difficult, disappointing, hurtful, painful situation, and they somehow turn it into some purpose, right? What was that? Well, how did they do that? They did that through focus, changing their focus. They can look at what they don't have, or they can look at what they do have, or what they can go towards and find and discover and create. It's like, I don't want this. I'm choosing something different. And so their eyes had to shift. Their vision had to be something bigger than where they were at. And so there are 3 steps to transformation. The first step is awareness. First of all, we got to be aware of our thoughts. We've got to be aware of our focus. We've got to be aware of our environment, recognizing what is, right? And then having an awareness, is one thing, but then it's like, okay, now we got to make the choice, right? We've got to decide, what am I going to do with that awareness now? And then the third thing is the change. You can decide to do something, and decisions to do determine our destiny, but you also got to follow through on that, and I think about the power to execute is so important, to be able to follow through on what we decide that we're going to do. That's where it happens. When I say at the end of every episode, leaders of transformation take action, right? What's the action that you take? First of all, it's the awareness, then it's the choice, and then it is the follow through, is making the change. That's where it happens. And you know what? It's none of the stories, none of the people that I've ever interviewed, did they have it easy? Did they just cruise through? It may appear that way because they're talking about their highlights, but none of them had it easy. But at every point that, every person that had that defining moment who said, okay, what am I going to do now? Maybe it was a failed business. Maybe it was a failed relationship. Maybe it was an illness. Maybe it was a betrayal. Okay. And some of us have had all those things, right? It's looking and saying, okay, this is what is. What am I going to do about it? And so today I would encourage you to to look at your own life and to say, okay, how can I apply that to my life? Maybe you're successful and you want to take it to that next level. And maybe you want to create significance. Maybe you want to build upon your success and make a difference in other people's lives. Where does your focus need to change? What words, what language, what declarations do you need to make about who you are and about what you're committing to do? And you look at also the state. Who do you need around you? What support system do you need around you? Are there relationships that are unhealthy that maybe need to be reevaluated, reconstructed, or released, and let go of because it's just not healthy, right? So I encourage you to do that. Maybe you're at a point where things are not going well. Maybe you've been struggling and you've been trying to get something off the ground and an idea that you have that just hasn't been going, and whether that's an entrepreneurial venture or a nonprofit or whatever, a career, is looking at it and saying, what am I focusing on? What are my words? What is my state? Create an awareness around where you're at right now. And in order for you to move forward, how does that focus need to change? What are the words that I'm saying to myself? If I'm saying, I can't, this never works for me, I always, get the short end of the stick, that language is going to become, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And so we get to change our focus. We get to change our words, and we get to change our state, our environment. We get to change our relationships. We get to change and decide what we're allowing in. Garbage in, garbage out. We listen to garbage, on the news, or we listen to garbage in social media, and we fill our minds with that. That's where our focus is going to be. And then, of course, there's language, right? Because there's people talking at us. All of that impacts our ability and our capacity to be able to be effective, to be successful, to just think clearly, right? And to have joy in our lives. So I hope this has been helpful to you because, a lot of times when you hear, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts and I've recorded a lot of podcasts and been on probably about 100 shows myself as well, to other people's shows, and I'm talking to people and it's like, there's a lot of qualities people say you need, right? But when it comes right down to it, it just comes down to these three things. And it's simple and it's profound. It's easy to remember. It's easy to shift in a moment, any moment. It doesn't have to take long to do it. So I encourage you to shift your focus, shift your words, start speaking life over yourself, start speaking life over your business, over your family, not what you see, but what you desire. I love what Joel Osteen said once. He said, don't use your words to describe your situation. Use your words to transform your situation, right? And so, I just encourage you to do that. In the coming months, this is a little heads up, I'm really excited about this. We're actually launching a new platform for the leaders of transformation to center on 3 questions. And it really is around what we're talking about here today. And it's like, okay, how do you practically do that? And one of the questions that is a common question for people is, who am I? Like, who do I believe, that I am, and what I'm capable of? What are my strengths? And so through my coaching, I've had a lot of people who come to me who are trying to figure out who they are. And some of them are just starting out, and some of them are at the top levels, executives of major companies. I had a guest on this show. I forget who it was. I think it might have been Peter Docker, but somebody who had written a book. And in that book, they were talking about leadership. And they said that 70% of C-suite executives do not know their identity or their purpose. And to me, without your identity and purpose, how can you possibly lead others well? How can you possibly create an environment where others can discover that for themselves? We need to know who we are. And number 2 is we need to know our purpose. And number 3, we need to know, how can I thrive and succeed? And so this platform is going to be centered around that. And we're going to be answering those 3 questions and helping you to discover yourself, if that's something that you're looking for. Discover your strengths, discover your abilities, discover what you've got to work with, the great things, the tools, the inventory that you have, and then how to turn that into an idea. If you're just in the aspiring stage, it's to turn that into an idea, a business venture. And then how do you launch that business venture and build to success? And so it is literally the incubator, the accelerator for leaders of transformation. So we are so excited. It's been a long time coming to be able to put all of that together, and all the experience that I have, but also, personally and in business and in the coaching I do, but also in all of what I've learned through, interviewing amazing guests on the show. And we'll have some special content that, will come out of that as well from some of the guests that we'll invite back to do some special content to be able to help you in specific areas. And so it's going to be awesome. So you can stay tuned for that. And, and if you want to be the first to actually hear about the updates on what's happening and so forth, I would encourage you to join our email list. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com/subscribe and sign up there. And for, right now, what we're doing is letting you know about latest episodes that are coming out and what they're about, and giving you all the links that you need. And as we go forward with this new platform, we're going to be sharing with you updates and also special promotions and free stuff and opportunities to be on this show and opportunities to take advantage of all that we have to offer. So I encourage you to subscribe, follow us, and I just thank you for supporting this show. I thank you for listening and tuning in, and I just pray that something that you heard here today will inspire you. Maybe it's like I say, leaders of transformation take action is taking action on something, sitting down, taking a few moments today, 10 minutes, and just 5 minutes even, and just saying, what am I focused on in this moment? How do I feel? What am I focused on? Right. And if I feel frustrated, or I feel depressed, or I feel tired, what am I focused on that is causing that to be my outcome, right? To causing that to be the way I feel. And maybe it's time, if you want to feel excited, you want to feel inspired, what do I need to be focusing on that's going to allow me to feel inspired? How do I need to shift my focus? How do I need to shift my words and shift my state, my physiology, literally my body language, my physiology in my body? But like I said, also my physical environment, my relationships, and something that you can start with today, and you can start to see the transformation happen little by little. It's not an overnight thing. Transformation takes time, because you can have that defining moment, but it's the follow through on that defining moment, that follow through on that decision that you made, that's where the transformation, the lasting transformation happens. So I encourage you to do that. We'd love to hear your stories, hear your comments. You can comment below if you're watching this on social, or you can reach out to us on leadersotransformation.com. Of course, follow us on social as well. And we'd love to hear from you. And if there's something that we haven't shared on this show that you would like us to share, that you say, hey, you know what, I'd really love for you to speak to this topic here, let us know. We love those suggestions, and then we can find guests to speak to that, and make sure that we're supporting you in what you need to be able to move forward and be the leader of transformation that you're capable of being. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for celebrating 500 episodes. I'm so blessed and grateful for every moment of this, and I'm looking forward to the journey ahead. So God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you next week on another episode of the Leaders of Transformation. Have a great day.